Welcome back to Why Blank Lost. I'm David Bloomberg, and even though I'm older, I can still get down with TikTok talk with the 20 somethings, unlike Will. Now, with me, of course, is my co host, who is in such a tight duo with me that I worry one of us may get cut. It's Big Brother 21's Ovi Kabir.
Usually, David, I'd say I'm so happy to be here. But after that first statement, that whatever you just said, my mind went blank. Hopefully, the viewers stay with us on that. I trust that is much more. The TikTok conversations are different. No, very excited to be here. And yes, we are a tight duo.
So, yes. Now, last week, I noticed from the comments that a lot of people enjoyed me coming out hot about how Zay played. And this week, as we were coming towards the end of the week, I was thinking it wouldn't be as necessary, especially with it being Amy, because it's Amy. Uh, but I was like, what is there to get mad at Amy about? And then I saw what she said to Julie and what she was saying in all her interviews. And the more I read, the more I listened, the madder I got. So I think some sparks are going to fly again today.
Amy made you mad? She really made you that mad? As
She
much as
did.
they?
Not as much as Zay, but she did. And it's not only her actions, but her refusal to take responsibility for her actions, as we will find out. Not to jump ahead there.
I'm excited to hear about it.
Yeah. Now, last week I mentioned that there wasn't one big alliance forming and dominating the conversation, but rather a bunch of smaller alliances kind of popping in and out of existence. And that continued this week. Even with that being the case, by Tuesday or Wednesday, things were pretty well settled in as far as who was likely going to be evicted. The question we're here to answer, as we do every week, is, well, like it says in the title of the podcast, why? To get those answers, we'll look at how Amy played compared to a set of guiding rules I originally wrote back in 2004 and have modified ever since. We will analyze her actions using what we saw on TV, live feeds, interviews, and other information. The most recent published version of the rules can be found at robhasawebsite.com/bigbrotherrules. But before we get to that, we usually have some other things to discuss about the week in general. And that's, of course, the case again this week. Specifically, I narrowed it down to two people. Let's start with my disavowed winner pick, Keanu.
Disavowed.
We talked about him last week, but he has continued to show he has zero social or strategic awareness whatsoever. Let's start with his ongoing Rachel interactions. If you're going to talk to someone about things you've heard or seen about them, you don't only talk about the bad things. It would be like pulling Riley aside and saying, hey, I saw clips of your bull riding. Remember that time you fell off the bull before it even got out of the gate? That was great. Or when you got flipped off in just 1 second and got trampled and it broke your leg? Wow, good times. You're just not going to do that. He has no ability to read the room ever. And this fight with Rachel was just a perfect example. We could see her as he was going on, getting tense and quiet. But he couldn't. He just kept going on and on. And I mean, the one area where I'll disagree with Rachel is she seems to think he did it on purpose. I don't agree. I just think he's so clueless, he doesn't realize what he did.
Yeah, I mean, and clarification, your winner pick is Keanu, and it's one of those things we were both
Disavowed.
very
Disavowed.
disavowed. Yeah, I was the one who said we should pick two winner
You
picks. All
did.
right, I said we should have one backup, one main,
I
one
mean, my
punt.
second one would have been Adrian, so I have at least
Uh,
a better chance
you would
there.
have
But
had, yeah, exactly. So I mean, but granted, both of us were pretty high on him. Keanu, that is pre-game, because we were convinced too that he was a fan of the game. He knew
he
about the game.
lied.
He lied to us, maybe himself, to everyone
Yeah.
else in the house. He doesn't know the game very well. And again, that doesn't bar anybody from doing well in this game and following these rules. Unfortunately, that maybe coupled with a little bit of overconfidence
A
in his abilities to relate with people.
little, just a little, a little.
That's a clip right there, David. I was just gonna say that. But um, yeah, I think it was first week we thought maybe okay, these are just stumbles. Maybe it's a first week stumbles. Second week, I think it's a pattern. I don't know what third week would hold for him, but I don't know if we'll see him for much longer in this essence because he is playing a game where everyone is not liking him and he's confused why, which is not a good combination.
Yeah, I mean, he's confused why, but then at the same time, he's in the veto meeting and he says, "I'm going to pick off everyone one by one."
What? Even
And
you had
it's
to be like,
like,
why me?
yeah, well, and I do think some people made a bigger deal of it than they needed to,
Uh,
because I mean, it's kind of the point of the game is to pick everyone off one by one, but you don't say it the way he did. He should not have
no.
said it to literally everyone there.
That
And
would break a
then,
rule of ours.
yeah, yeah, well, lots of rules of ours, all the rules of ours. Uh,
Oh,
then later, he was talking to himself and he said he doesn't know what he's going to do because he can't keep fighting by himself week to week. And it's like, hmm, maybe you shouldn't have put yourself in a situation where you're all alone. And then he also said Rachel was the most frustrating person ever to deal with. And I was thinking, that's only because you haven't had to deal with yourself.
silver lining is that some players burn early.
Yeah.
They find a way, and it's early enough where people forget about all this stuff happening because it's week one, week two, and he might have the ability. Because I do think innately he can connect with people. It's just how he does it, and also I hate that he's turning into "Where's my hug" type of guy, where everyone's like, "I don't want to give him a hug." I mean, I don't want to skip too much into it. But Amy's like, why does he keep asking for hugs? Uh, so I think maybe hopefully that lessens a little bit.
Yeah, I had noticed that myself, that he was always hugging everyone. And I don't think it's in a creepy way. There's another
No,
player in
no.
there who's hugging people in a creepy way. I may have mentioned his name already in association with bull riding. But I don't think that Keanu is doing that. I it's but it's I mean, I I'm kind of a hug guy, a hugger, but not every 5 freaking minutes and not to everyone at the start and end of every conversation. I mean, there's a
Yeah.
time and a place for it.
Especially, I think it's one of those things where, especially when you have 16 new people in a house,
Mhm.
17 actually, people's comfort levels with physical touch with
Yeah.
random people are going to be different. And I think some people develop a level of closeness to other players relatively like quickly, versus
Mhm.
other people take a little bit more time to warm that up. And there's nothing wrong with that. So it's one of those situations I think at this point where it's like they feel he feels like he's much closer to people than maybe he really is, and he's a much more touchy person than other people feel comfortable with by themselves. Not a horrible thing, but when they're combined, that's a bad combination and they can lead to other issues. So
Yes.
I'm hoping we can nip that one in the bud. But yeah, I feel I'm like, man, everything that could kind of go wrong for this guy, which is self-induced, has been
Yeah.
going wrong.
Yeah, like I said, he has no ability to read a room. And another person who has no ability is the second person we'll talk about. That would be Ashley. It's like she is literally begging to be voted out because she just makes random obnoxious comments to people without realizing how obnoxious they are. Like, this is a fairly minor one. She asked Will if he would vote to keep Adrian or Amy if it were those two in front of Amy. Why would you put someone in that position? Um, she argues with people about dumb things. Like she argued with Rachel that Rachel is bougier than she is.
Hmm.
Um, and then on top of all of those, I mean, we could do a whole podcast just listing all the weird things that she says. Um, more of them happened even since this particular eviction. Like other weird things have happened, but we don't go past this line, so we'll stop. Um, the other thing she does that is annoying people is she acts like she doesn't have to clean up in the house. And this has been going on for a while. At one point early this week, Catherine was literally jumping up and down in a conversation with Vince because he saw the same thing she did in terms of Ashley. Until that point, Ashley had never washed a dish. She did not even know where the clean plates were, which Catherine acted out. She did not even know where. And now Jimmy later said in a separate conversation that Ashley is now counting how many dishes she cleans, which if you have to count, that's never a good thing. Like really, you want to prove that you clean dishes. So I've cleaned 10 dishes now or whatever. Like, no, just clean up in general.
Yeah, it's tough. And just for those who might not caught it too, actually is my winner pick for the season. So both our winner picks aren't doing the greatest right here. And so unfortunately,
We did not do a good job of reading the people who couldn't read the room.
Yeah, what's that say about us?
Yeah.
And I mean, we both were pretty mutually high on each other's people. And I think I think it's disappointing. I think, there could be a change up. Maybe we see it there, but I think something that has been difficult for her. And we love stories here on this podcast. Dave and I love telling about personal experiences. So I will liken it to this one. Hannah, my fiance, soon to be wife, in 1 week actually. She had a friend, all right, and she's a very sweet person, caring in a lot of ways. But they had this thing where there's a little bit of entitlement on certain things. All right. When you cook for them or things like that, they wouldn't say thank you. They would take the plate, eat the plate, and put the plate back without a word, And then if you asked them if they enjoyed the meal, they did enjoy the meal, but there was no thanks. There's a little strange, like, and where how I grew up, how you always say thanks for yourself. You don't expect, you're not entitled to anything. And so this friend, it was one thing in a bucket, but then it turned into other things. There was no thank yous. There was always this when Hannah and her would stay together, travel together, stuff on the floor. Never, if Hannah had to pick it up, it would just be, no thing. It was just a messy workplaces there. There's some people who move around like that. And I'm not saying that's Ashley, but in these situations from Showergate, from the beginning part, we saw there was a lack of awareness for other people's space. And I think we're seeing that continuously go. And that's kind of the quickest way, I feel like, in Big Brother to really get a bad rep without doing anything game strategy. I mean, in fact, that's one of the rules. Don't make people upset, essentially. Be nice to others. And I think all these small things for Ashley are adding up that makes it a person that you don't want to live around. And that becomes a hard thing in Big Brother because if you don't want to live around somebody, kind of want to get rid of them. And right now, Ashley's in a hot place because truly she's just not thinking of others around her. And maybe she never had roommates before. I don't know. I feel like this is something you go through going with roommates. It might be a new thing. It's strange, especially as when you're in the professional.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people on the videos that I've made about her. I had a TikTok that went real big talking about her. A lot of people are like, she went to college, she went to law school. What did she do? Did how did she clean her own plates? Did she, I don't know the answer to that. But then on top of that, it keeps going because it's annoying people to the point that they can't hide it anymore. And when Rachel and Zach were cleaning the bathroom, Ashley walked in. She apparently wasn't going to help. She just saw them there. And she got somewhat guilted into it. And then during this conversation, Rachel asked if she ever did chores as a kid. And she said, no. Scrubbed a floor? No. Washed dishes? No. I think we have our answer here. Like as a kid, she said her job was to get good grades, which is fine. I understand that. That was, my kid's main job. I wasn't going to overdo it, but they still had chores to do around the house. Like your grades aren't going to suffer because you wash a dish.
I mean, it's one of those things where, again, I was really high on her. I hope she does well. And I hope for both of our winner picks, this is some stumbles. Maybe there's some more improvements. Again, we were only seeing some bits and pieces of it, but it's very much giving to me. Again, we talk strategy here. This is the part where we're like, this will probably lead. Like, this is our one segment of our podcast where we like to just talk about what's going on else going on at home. But it's really giving that, hey, got your coffee. Can you Venmo me $3.79? It's giving, it's like I don't know. I don't know if you've never lived around people or other like you do a little for something for somebody like her counting, like you mentioned, how many plates she's washed.
Yeah.
It, just in a game level, especially as a fan of the game, it makes me confused why you think this behavior is going to just go well, regardless if you do it inside or outside of the home, like how this house, like in the real life, in the house, you gotta kind of be a little bit kinder in ways and let certain things there and that's why people probably aren't calling it out yet because they're like, all right, well, I'm not gonna call this out, but like, are y'all all
Well,
seeing this?
I mean, it started, like I said, she got
Yeah,
guilted into doing it. And then she tried complaining about it when Rachel had walked away. She complained about it to Zach, and Zach was like, you got to remember to, people will judge you on things.
yeah.
And then she started using a wet Swiffer. But Rachel was like, you're just basically pushing the dirt around at this point. And Ashley made a comment like, oh, I think that's just the color of the floor. And Rachel's like, no, it is not the color of the floor. And, meanwhile, earlier, Rachel had literally been on her hands and knees scrubbing the shower tile. And then here comes in, misprivileged, having a difficult time pushing a Swiffer around. But I do think I am going to, bend our rule about not going any further into the live feeds. I'm not going to give any specifics, but something happened today as we're recording it where another issue came up. It was either today or late last night. Things get kind of blurry in the middle of the night. And someone said to her, you need to stop doing this thing. I won't give any spoilers about what it was she did, but you need to stop doing it. And she's like, oh no, that's not a problem. That's personal. That's not game related. And if they make it game related, that's their problem. I think that's her mentality. Like to her, cleaning, being rude, all those things, they aren't game related to her. Everything is game related.
Yeah, and it's also kind of like in the Big Brother community, there's a lot of like these online games, these orgs where people play. They log in, play the game, and then they can log out. You do the strategy, you do the conversations, but you're not living life in those. And that's
Right.
kind of the way it feels like she's playing it. She's playing it like an online org, like
Yeah.
log in,
Yeah.
conversate, but then all right, we're all on our own time. And I think that's just unfortunate because it's just not going to work out and you're going to upset people. And I want to just lastly, because this is probably the longest we've talked about this segment beforehand.
Yeah.
We're passionate about our winner picks are Disavowed. I'm still going to vow her. I'm hoping that she can pull it together. But I do think it's one of those things too. The argumentative level for everything and having to feel the need to get your point across on certain matters, especially small trivial matters, is really making people upset. And Ashley's kind of having a habit of doing that where it's
Yes.
sometimes you just gotta let it go. Or also sometimes it's okay to let the other person feel like they gotta win, especially in Big Brother, because early games, especially pre-jury beforehand, some of the decisions we're gonna see aren't going to be about strategy. They're going to be about social connections. And I feel like when you're in week 7, week 8, you're going there and then you're starting to think, okay, potentially I need to keep this person. I don't like them, but I know I can win against them. Right now, there's so many options. It becomes, and she's been on a hot seat. It's not, that's the thing is like when you've been on a hot seat, you got to kind of take a step back probably. But I mean, since week 1, we knew she was a target. She didn't go home because she was able to get off the block essentially. Who knows what's going to happen in the future. This is not why Ashley lost. This is just us
Yeah.
ranting about
It may be why
yeah,
Ashley will lose, but
we'll
we'll
lose.
see, when that happens.
This is, I will say, it's impressive that you and I did pick probably 2 of the players who are making it the most difficult for themselves, who have the
Yes.
tools to do well in this game, who, for whatever reason, are breaking every rule you've set forth.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Do you have anything or anyone else before, that you want to discuss before we move on?
No, I think everyone else pertains to the reason why somebody went home this week, and
Okay.
so we'll save it for those parts.
All right. Well, before we do that, of course, as I've mentioned before, we unfortunately don't have a poster with the rules of Big Brother on it yet. But we do have one for Survivor. If you're a Survivor fan too, you can get that at robhasawebsite.com/yxlostfeed. Scroll down, go to the poster, click on it. In addition, there's the poster on a t-shirt and there's the checklist on a t-shirt, which is Similar, not identical, but similar rules to the rules for Big Brother. So, Amy came into Big Brother 27 as the Mastermind's apprentice, and then became, in her words, Rachel's apprentice. She seems to throw almost all the blame for her own loss on Rachel, and so do some other people. As she told Julie, they wanted to cut me and Rachel. But is that really the reason she was voted out? Even if it was, who's to blame? Let's figure out why. As the mastermind himself said, Amy was better at pushing secret buttons than playing the game. Because at RHAP, we know Big Brother, and we know why Amy lost. The first and most important rule is to scheme and plot. And Amy's first words when she got out of the house were, I suck at this game. And then she slightly more quietly said, I'm not a good liar. Dalton Ross asked her what aspects of the game she sucks at. And she said she's honest to a fault. So we kind of have a big chunk of our answer for this rule right there. And the thing is, this was by no means the first time she has said something like this. Earlier this week on the live feed, she said this game is full of manipulation and lying, and she's not good at it. She doesn't do it in real life, etc. And then on Wednesday, she said, all this game talk here is crazy, which led people on Blue Sky to post some funny parodies, like her going to church and saying, all this praying here is crazy. Or her at the grocery store saying, all these products here are crazy. Like, what did she expect coming into Big Brother?
Yeah, no, I think she was, enamored by the experience of Big Brother. She's a big fan in going to it. I think it'll, again, early game, some people get a little bit of the shock where, oh my God, I'm going in there. I can attest to that. You're like lights, your eyes are big, the lights are bright. You're in the show that you've always wanted to be in. Unfortunately, with her, she had actually, I don't know, unfortunately for her, but in this situation, Rachel was there. I think for her, she might feel unfortunately because she attests her going home partially to Rachel, maybe majority to Rachel.
I think she pretty much blames it all on Rachel, which
Right.
we'll still get to in the rest of this rule
We
and
get
the
it.
second rule, yes, as we're going on.
But like, you have to have a strategy in place
Mm-hmm.
regardless of that to go there. And also, one thing I do want to note, she didn't know that she's going in as accomplice a
Right.
few days beforehand. So it's not something you're surprised by right immediately into there. So I think this is kind of also what we were both very middle of the pack on how she would be able to develop in the game, because you need to figure out how a strategy going into the game. If you don't really have a strategy other than Girls Alliance, which unfortunately, as much as we want that, I would love to see that happen. Historically, we're like, it doesn't happen, and then within 1 or 2 weeks, we're like, maybe is it? No, it isn't.
Yeah. Yeah. And this, you called it getting wide-eyed, not understanding, whatever. This was her main problem overall. In week one, Zay talked about how Amy wasn't even doing her own lobbying. Rachel was doing it for her. And while I hesitate to take anything Zay says seriously, I think a lot of that has actually shown to be more or less true in week two. Indeed, while Zay did plenty of harm to his own game, as we discussed last week, part of the reason Amy survived was Rachel bringing the votes together, which is one reason I'm so annoyed by Amy telling Julie she didn't get a chance to play the game because she met Rachel right away. Quote, it really hurt my game. I feel like I didn't get a chance to play the game. That is BS. Amy had a chance to play. She had the same chance to play the game everyone else had there. She cannot blame Rachel for herself not doing anything. Rachel was still lobbying people as late as Thursday, while Amy looked ready to give up by Tuesday. Rachel had to push her to try to get her to talk to people. Rachel was the only thing that was pushing her forward, while Amy wanted to just be an anchor. You're muted.
It's one of those things, right? I think you said it really well that Rachel was one of her biggest assets to be playing a game. And here's the thing, she wasn't found that she was the accomplice. And that's where my issue is. You could have, then you're in a perfect scenario where you can tell Rachel, I am a big fan of you, I'm an accomplice, I am the accomplice who got you here. Let's, you know, I have your back. Let's stay on different sides of the house.
Mm-hmm.
We know we have that secret alliance now because there's already some form of bond there. Let's work on the other side. She chose to be seen as Rachel's ally. And then Rachel, of course, went to bat for her. But she talks about having this connection to Rachel being her downfall. Well, she could have been very covert. She chose to do that. And then she didn't try to fight for herself because then what happens is if you're not doing anything on your own end and you're letting somebody else back for you, people might not want to take a shot at Rachel yet because I think there's a lot of different factors there, but they want to take a shot at who's next to her if they're not doing anything. If you're only just a number there, I think that was a big part of her strategy. Need to be that she wasn't just a number for Rachel. She needed to be a number
Right.
for other people. And we even see it with the women in the house. They didn't feel like she was a number for them. They felt that they're on the bottom of a totem pole in their women's alliance and that she would only focus on that. So, and she was surprised to see that in her interviews post.
Yeah, I mean, she, like you said, she should have been trying to get people on her side. She should have been trying to ensure that those she thought were with her would stay with her. But no, it seemed like she spent more time moaning and groaning about her situation than she did trying to change it. While Amy, you know, she was doing a lot of nothing. And meanwhile, someone who she could have been going up against, Adrian, finally kicked things into gear Wednesday by going around telling people, I'm going to win comps, I'm going to protect you, I'm going to target Keanu, I hate liars, etc. That helped pull at least a couple of people over to his side in comparison to Amy in case that battle had come up. Now, do I think she could necessarily have ever pulled enough people to get rid of Will instead of her? That's a tough one. At the way things played out, no. Maybe if she had been playing differently from the start, then it could have been possible. But she was, we'll never know because she basically didn't try. She was too busy joining him in complaining about, we're not willing to kiss those 20 somethings asses, you know, we don't want to beg. Well, then you came to the wrong game.
You're very right on that one. I hate saying that this is a game where you need to kiss butt now and then, or you need to
Mm-hmm.
figure out things, but especially when you're on the block and you're playing this, you know what you signed up for. You didn't sign up for a game where you're like, oh man, I don't need to charm people. I don't need to talk to them or convince them there. You're typically when you're going at, if you're at an age, a big brother, if you're at 35 plus, you're considered elderly in the game.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, so because you're going to cast 20-year-olds almost across the board. And we talked about this in our pregame stuff where this is a younger house, it seems like. And, one thing I've noticed too with it is not just an age gap we're seeing with people, because it's a 10-year age gap. There's relatability there. We're seeing more over the years in 2025 specifically too, Gen Z culture that kind of permeates from the 20-year-olds, where it's like there are certain memes, there's certain videos that go on that have such a quick lifespan that if you're not chronically online, you're not going to be able to keep up with this type of stuff. So that lengthens that stuff. So you have some people who accept that, who are like, okay, yeah, let me just figure out how I can talk to them. And then some people who just completely disavow that, which I think was her route. She took like, all right, screw them. I don't get this. I don't relate to them. Why am I going to try to beg for their, vote?
Right.
I'll let Rachel do it. And then also blame Rachel for the reason she goes home. And I think that's where, some of my frustration, but mostly yours, David. I mean, I don't want to speak for you, is the fact that if she said like, hey, I suck at the game, it was my fault, it'd be one thing, versus
Right.
I suck at the game, but actually the reason why I went home is because of
Right.
Rachel.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, before we leave this rule one here, I suppose we should mention that Amy handled being the accomplice well, from what little we could see. As the mastermind indicated in his goodbye message, she was good at pressing secret buttons. Of course, she was told exactly what to do by production ahead of time. But once the hunt for the apprentice began, she laid low and didn't make herself obvious. So I guess at least there is that. Mm-hmm. But let's move on to the second rule, which says not to scheme and plot too much and to keep your scheming secret. Now, it might initially seem like if Amy didn't do enough scheming, she was fine here. But no, she wasn't. Because part of this rule warns against being in an obvious duo. And we certainly know that everyone from Julie to Amy herself blamed that for her demise in the game. To be specific, I am talking about the part of this rule that says open partnerships are just begging to be split up. So that means players need to avoid the appearance of being part of a tight pair. That obviously did not happen with Rachel and Amy.
It didn't, but also she kind of overplayed in other parts of it too. And I mean, we see that, but we see in week one where when she's with Ashley and goes to the HOH and essentially says, "Hey, like it's not a big deal. I know the shower. I know we talk about Showergate, but like y'all need to chill about." Like she took such a strong stance for somebody that she's not exactly really too close with at that
Well,
point. You know,
I
she's
think
been,
that they were close, and that was part of the problem was they became close. That was a different
yeah,
a different duo that you know she had this problem twice over.
yeah.
Even in her interview with Mike Bloom, Mike told her she was nominated the first week because of defending Ashley, and she basically blew it off.
No, exactly. I mean, I when I say she's not like in actuality, not very close, but yeah, game related, yeah, they're
Yeah.
close in that part of it. Like you said, two duos back to back, and it's one of those things where with or without Rachel, she's probably going to find somebody else to kind of die on the hill with, and I think that was the issue, right? It's like she's completely tethering her game to other people purposely, whether it was Rachel or
Mm-hmm.
somebody else, and then making their issues her issues. And again, I get that's a admirable trait to have in the real world when you're gonna ride or die to for your friend. You know, you're gonna be there for them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she says that, like, I will ride for my women. I want to be that women's women, like a girl's girl. And I completely get that in the Big Brother game, but there has to be a little bit of nuance there. And she was complete. People just saw her as they're like, okay, why are you fighting so hard on other people's behalf when it doesn't really relate to you?
Yeah. I mean, the two of them being a duo was talked about by other house guests. It was emphasized early on, like you said, with Ashley, and then especially with Rachel, being Rachel's number one. Obviously, we saw Zay talk about that in his failed attempt to save himself with his final speech, but it wasn't exactly news to anyone. I was going to list all the people who talked about it, but I'm afraid I might accidentally leave someone out. I think it's safe to say the list would include almost everyone. And the thing is that even as some people talked about it, some of it was an excuse. Yes, some of them wanted to weaken Rachel, but others are just fine working with Rachel, and it had little or nothing to do with that. For them, Amy herself was the problem. And, that's even if, I mean, putting that aside, which we'll get to some of the Amy stuff being a problem later, but even if she had been targeted 100% because she was close to Rachel, whose fault is that? Amy told Rachel on Saturday before being nominated that the only reason she would be a target is she was friends with Rachel. Not true, but okay. Dalton Ross asked Amy if her friendship with Rachel was a blessing or a curse. And she said it was a curse because she was seen as a number and a shield for Rachel. In her interview with Mike Bloom, like I said, when Mike told her why she was nominated because of the Ashley stuff, she blew it off and then complained more about Rachel, saying that Rachel, quote, screwed her game. Another thing she went and told Dalton was it ruined her game. Quote, I didn't even have a game. I didn't even get to play my own game because I was instantly her accomplice, not the accomplice. Reading these things is what really, really pissed me off. She was acting like these were events that just happened to her instead of actions that she took. It's like, no, Amy, take responsibility. And she didn't. She made one comment in a couple interviews where she said, my kids told me not to pick the wrong allies, and she acknowledged that she did. But it was like a throwaway line before she went back to blaming Rachel. So I can't even give her credit for acknowledging it because, like to Rob and Taryn, when she said that, she continued, well, if Rachel hadn't been in the house, Amy would have been actually had the chance to play her own game. So again, she's disavowing any responsibility. And no, Rachel did not force herself on you as a friend and ally. She didn't take you and tie you down and say, you must be my ally. You must be my friend. This was Amy's choice. And she even said later in interviews that she was happy to have her there. She said in the game too, you can't turn around and pretend otherwise at the same time.
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the nail because she assumed that responsibility. The game didn't put any further restrictions on her as an accomplice other than you just have to escape not
Yeah.
being known as the accomplice. You don't need to connect with Rachel. Like, it'd be a different thing. Like we've seen other seasons where some people are truly tethered to a player,
Yes.
like where she needs to do certain things, or if Rachel gets on the block and gets voted out, you will be on the block and
Right.
actually get voted. Like, there's some weird twist there. But no, if anything, I just can't see how you can look at this as a curse because it was your own fandom that made you want to be close. And then she said she had felt some related parts of it because her and Rachel can talk about children. They don't
Mm-hmm.
feel maybe as relatable with the other people in the house who don't have certain life experiences that they do. But that's not Rachel's thing, that's not her fault. And if
Right.
anything, Rachel, we can make the argument, and we'll see down the line. I'm unsure, could make the argument that she was more hurt by Amy. She had to go out to bat for Amy. She tried to keep her there. I mean, she was trying to expend a lot of capital to basically be like, "Hey, I'm Rachel Riley, and this is you. Don't come against me. This is my ally." And then Amy was like, "Hey, I have my own game. I'm gonna play my own way. I don't." That could have been possible. Like people voted her out at the end of the day, not because she was a number to Rachel, but because she wasn't a number to others, and that was her issue here. She was unable to scheme and plot for herself, and just became a number because she chose to be that. So
Right.
I don't know. It's hard, to feel like there's a level of responsibility you have to take, but also being so wrong in the fact that you are leaving the house and then blaming it on somebody else is just kind of frustrating to see.
Yes. Yes. And the thing is that both Amy and Rachel should have known being seen as an obvious duo could be a problem, but they made zero attempt to hide it. I mean, I guess we could say it worked out fine for Rachel since she's still there. And I mean, we'll see if she takes a hit from it, like you said. But Amy should have seen this coming. Plus, Amy being too close, like we talked about at the top of this rule, this wasn't the first time she made that mistake. She was a nominee, an initial nominee, in large part because she defended Ashley way too hard, especially for the couple days. And in this game, once you're a nominee one time, it's a lot easier to be a nominee again. And so, again, quit blaming other people. You got yourself up on the block the first time. That led to you being on the block the second time.
It seems like you're saying there might be a flexibility issue here. You see,
Maybe, because the third rule does in fact talk about that. Now,
hmm
I don't think she's been very flexible in her thinking about what led to her elimination. How do you think she did within the game itself? It sounds to me like you may have some thoughts on that.
I do have some thoughts on it because I feel like one thing. This is when we always talk about to show your flexibility in a game. You have to be pushed. You had, in my opinion, and we saw she came with a strategy where she wanted to work all girls alliance, be there, girl power. She tried that. She didn't change her ways. She allied with basically the women as much as she could, but she wasn't able to execute that very well. And moreover, she did not change her game plan. She kind of, like you said before, gave up 2 days before the eviction. I mean, there was no world where she was moving and changing things up. And yeah, like you said, like maybe Rachel should know that she shouldn't be seen as a close duo. But at the same time, for Rachel, she might already know that, and it's might be easier for Rachel than to I don't know what goes through her mind exactly, but be able to float by herself again now and then connect with other people because she has allies. Which that's the surprising thing is Amy was not able to take other allies that are connected to Rachel, work with them, and then start talking to other people and say, hey, you know what? We have a block of people. We can make something happen here, or we can have some interconnectivity. She wasn't trying to change the way she was thinking in the same part of the game. And this is the one season, not the one season, there's other seasons, but this season specifically, there's not a hard, crazy big block of people that are
Mm-hmm.
one mindset train. So there's different conglomerations in this house. And this is one of the ones where you can be really fluid in the way you want to work your way through. So if he was able to do that, or even attempted to do that, I would say yes, she's been flexible. We saw that it didn't work out for her, but she had no attempt to it. So I
Yeah.
don't think she
Yeah.
very much is.
Yeah. I agree. I think her lack of flexibility was kind of the foundation for much of what we've already discussed. Plus, she did something that I can't stand. After telling Dalton that being close to Rachel ruined her game, which we talked about, Amy said, I wouldn't change anything. Well, then you really can't complain about it because not only did you not do anything to prevent this from happening, but you're saying you wouldn't change it even if you could. It's like double inflexibility. You didn't change it when you had a chance. You're still saying you wouldn't change it.
I, I give people a pass for saying that just because I think it's probably like it's a way to justify this experience and not be so hard on yourself. I know it riles David up there, as y'all can see. But yeah, no, I mean it's you would hope you want to change something. It's not like you want $750,000. Most people would be happy for that. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's
I mean, if you're saying, if you truly believe that Rachel ruined your game, then maybe you would go back and change something about that, like not pairing up with her right away. But this her lack of flexibility plays in with other rules as well. We discussed how she admitted she's not a good liar, but you need to have the flexibility to change your outside behavior within the game. Because she said that I gave a quote earlier about how I'm just not like that outside in the real world. This isn't the real world. This is Big Brother. I mentioned how she joined Will and complaining about not wanting to kiss butt. Again, we discussed it already, but it's a huge part of this game. It is something you need to change from your normal behavior to accommodate. She just seemed to want to live her normal life in the Big Brother house, and it doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't. And one thing, we say about this is my pet peeve here. I don't like it when people say like they're not good liars or they have to tell the truth. There's a difference between that and then feeling like you always have to speak on certain things, like
Right.
put yourself in position. And it's not about lying or not. Just don't speak. Like don't talk about it. Don't go to bat for things that aren't like you know not good in the Big Brother house. I
Yeah.
just go back to the Ashley situation where she went over there. I was trying to be like, hey, this is like why are we getting mad? Like, no one's pushing you to like lie or say nothing. Just like be like, it's your decision. I think
Yeah.
for some people, it's very difficult not to just speak in general in the Big Brother house because that's something they do outside the house. And that's probably why they were cast as well, too.
Yeah.
No one who typically is cast on Big Brother or somebody who just doesn't want to talk or speak. So you have these people there who want to talk a lot. They have the platform now in the Big Brother have to continuously do it. And then, yeah, that's the frustrating thing. Like, it's not about being a good liar or not. You can win Big Brother, I still think, without being the best liar. It's just like choose when to speak.
Right. Right. All right. Well, the fourth rule says players should not let their emotions control them. And certainly we saw Amy getting emotional even early in the game because she missed her kids. And, you know, some of her fellow players did overreact to that a bit. But I don't think that was her real issue with this rule. I think it goes back again to the Rachel issue. She said in her interviews that she was, and you already brought this up, happy to find a fellow mom of the same age, and she loves Rachel and she got along well with her. And all of that is well and good. But then you can't turn around and blame Rachel for your eviction. As we discussed already, Amy had the ability to make her own choices. And one of those choices should have been to realize that although she had an emotional attachment to Rachel, it was not good for her game and she needed to branch out or separate or do something different. But she didn't. The most she did was talk crap about Rachel to someone like Ashley, while Rachel was busy telling others she would fight tooth and nail to keep Amy safe. And that obviously didn't help because Ashley was already on her side and it didn't amount to anything anyway. She needed to take action and separate that emotion out, and she simply didn't.
No, I mean it's one of those things where you have to figure out how you can control it comes back to it, like, what do you speak, what do you say on? And again, I understand the feeling feeling alone, like in a situation, and you're like missing the people in your life outside there. It's going to be tough, and I feel for, and it's the sad thing is, it's strange because when we criticize or talk about a player, a lot of these qualities are wonderful qualities to
Mhm.
be outside of the Big Brother house. I imagine she's a wonderful mother. I imagine she's a great person to be around, a great friend to have who will go to bat for you. But in the Big Brother house, especially when you're a fan, there's certain things you got to know, that you're separating yourself beforehand and afterwards.
Yeah.
And when she has these outbursts or these conversations about how sad she's feeling, or she feels like she needs to be connected with certain players to play with them, it's not going to do well.
Right. Right. Well, the fifth rule says players need to pretend to be nice and play the social game. Back in the first rule, I mentioned Amy telling Dalton Ross that one aspect of the game where she sucked was that she is too honest. And, we've talked about that a little bit since then. That's a problem in this rule as well, because as part of that answer, she also said, I tell people what I think about them and I don't care. In real life, I can just cut them off. I never talk to them again. But this is not real life. This is a Big Brother house and you can't do that. You can't just tell them what you think of them and then go your separate ways. You have to live with them. And if you don't like them, it doesn't matter. You're in a house living with this person. My kids are probably screaming at the TV, Mom, don't say that. I can't help it. I'm going to say it. That's a pretty good summary of like the opposite of this rule. Like, if someone were to say, "Hey, David, what is the behavior that would be the exact mirror image of what this rule says?" I think Amy just took care of that because she knew she was on Big Brother. She knew she should not be doing these things, but she couldn't help it.
Mhm.
Now, there's a reason this rule doesn't just say be nice. Sometimes we do have people who are just nice. It says pretend to be nice, but she couldn't even pretend.
Yeah, I appreciate her being self-aware about this. And I wonder, maybe with some time, maybe her feelings about, like, oh, Rachel threw her game will be differently, and she'll be, accept responsibility fully. Right now we can only go with what we see.
Right.
Um, but yeah, it's one of those things where she was an antithesis of this rule, probably. I mean, this game at its core, especially an early game, we've talked about it. It is very social and how you connect with people. I mean, we spent probably a good 15 minutes talking about Ashley and Keanu, about our winner picks, of how they've kind of faltered in these areas, and
Mm-hmm.
that's hurt them. And Amy was the same way. And it's one of those things where, there needs to be an attempt. And I think that's what's frustrating, when you go into the house not even attempting to try to pretend to be nice, or to bat for people who you might disagree with. It's the reason why you're on Big Brother. And of course, like, there's reasons I want to see people go home every week. That's how the game is played, right? It's fun to see it. But I
Right.
want to see people get outplayed instead of outplaying themselves.
Yeah.
And I think that's the sad thing to see. What she didn't try. She didn't try to do these things.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, Rachel even told Amy exactly how to follow this rule in some certain situations. Before Jimmy nominated her, Rachel told her what to say to Jimmy to make him feel good about her and to follow him around like a puppy dog and so on. Amy clearly didn't like this idea, and Rachel even said, I know it's annoying, but you got to do it. But this is Amy we're talking about. She wouldn't do it. She said that in that quote. So instead of convincing Jimmy she was on his side, we ended up in a situation where he nominated her. And at one point, he said, I can't listen to her complain and bitch anymore.
Yeah, I mean, you're really turning off people there, and you got to know your dynamics in the house of who is going to want to hear certain things. You have to figure out their temper, their level of, okay, I hear you. Like, this is like, say your words, get out there. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's one of those things where it's like each person, you have to be adaptable with each of them. And she kind of used one way with each person. She would say, her excuse, probably what she said, is that this is how she is. She's straightforward. This is how she, talks. But you got to change up your ways with each player, because I think a lot of people say, I appreciate somebody who tells it like it is and doesn't only speaks the truth, speaks what's on their mind. But in the reality, the people who actually do that, they're always the most fun to be around, especially in a setting like this. Like you don't want to always hear what's on. Like I don't want to hear what's on David's mind half the time. I don't need to
Hey,
speak it out loud, and you probably don't want to hear what's on my mind all the time. We filter what we're gonna say, and then we say it out loud. And sometimes we have a fun bit, but that's how it goes, especially with new players and new people around there. I don't care for what 16 strangers have to say right off the top of their dome. I hope we think what we're going to say before we say it. And this wasn't the case.
yeah, and lots of people had this opinion of her because like I already mentioned what Jimmy said, but while Adrian was finally kicking things into gear Wednesday by going around telling people he would win comps and protect them and target Keanu, Amy was doing a lot of nothing except continuing to annoy people. Even someone like Mickey, who had till that point been a holdout in Amy's favor, eventually went against her in part because she just didn't like her. And I'm not saying this was the only reason. I can't even say for sure it was a majority reason, but it's a lot easier to let someone go when they're up against someone who is really likable and that person isn't. You had Adrian and Will, two people who were generally likable people, and you had Amy, who people were like, do we care if we lose her?
Yeah. And I mean, just one last thing I want to add on to that. It's that when you're playing with these other players and other, people around the house, the way you can get people to like you and you have to be. Sorry, David. I just lost my train of thought when we just said that. I was thinking, I was thinking something, and then it came right out of there. So I'm gonna pause on this thought because I'm gonna remember in a second. It just
Okay.
brain fart.
Okay. Well, I mean, we said, you said that sometimes you don't always say everything that you're thinking. So maybe what you were thinking said, I don't want to be said and ran away.
I think that might be it. I'm
Yeah.
gonna come back with it. Sometimes
Okay.
you gotta think of what you're gonna say.
Yes. Yes. All right. In the meantime, we'll go on to the sixth rule, which warns against being too much of a threat. Amy obviously wasn't any sort of a comp threat. So there's that. But because of that, it made her a different type of threat in an upside down world kind of way. Two ways, really. One was that as an ally, she wasn't helpful other than simply as a number. Jimmy called her dead weight because she wasn't going to win anything. And that may be the case. I didn't like when they were saying that about her early on. But if that's the way you're perceived, then you need to do something to change that perception. And the thing is, if you're in the house and you have the opportunity to pick your allies, you want someone who at least has a chance to win HOH or veto and take you off the block if you're in danger. But nobody thought Amy had that capability.
Yeah, when you're next to other people, like you mentioned beforehand, who have connections, have people who they like. When you compare it to her, who now looks like just an asset to one player, Rachel, it becomes that threat level is such a weird thing because it's like, okay, by yourself, you're not a threatening person. But when you compare it to these other people and you're an asset for somebody else, it becomes higher. And what I was going to say before that my brain kind of came back to it and it leads into this portion is that I'm impressed that typically that when people are like, oh, this player is unlikable, annoying, or in this position might be a threat to the game, it comes in group consensus where it's like one party, group of people are like, this is how we should feel. And then everyone kind of falls under that. We've seen that in Big Brother beforehand, a group dynamic there. This wasn't the case. It was separate groups because we've talked about the season, how there's different conglomerates here. Multiple people came to the same conclusion about her. Who she is can be in the game a little bit annoying, but also here is like actually I don't know if it's better for her to be in the game. I mean, they tried to throw a little bit that man, Adrian might be a bigger threat than her. We don't know about this, but then as it broke down into it, well, yeah, maybe, but he's a bigger asset in a lot of ways.
Right.
She is a threat, but not an asset.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the other reason that she was a threat was something that Rachel discussed on the eviction episode and then lied about to the other players because she told us that if you put Amy against a strong player in the future, the strong player will go home because people will be like, why would I want to get rid of Amy instead of the strong player? And I do think that's likely true. But then she tried to make the opposite argument to other people, but they weren't falling for it. They could see the truth, because Rachel was like, "Well, if you're up against Amy, Amy will obviously go," and it's like, no, that's not what's going to happen, and they could see right through that argument. Um, so they you know, good try, Rachel, but no. Uh, as a matter of fact, it was Rachel's hope, as we saw, that she could take Amy to the end for an easy win. But everyone knew that they couldn't let that happen.
Mhm. I think there's another dynamic that's going to be there is that we have three players they're nominating, right? So you have three.
Yes.
So we already kind of seeing a bit of, I don't want to call things early, but a little bit of a goat in Kelly where she's already been on the block. And so when somebody's on the block, we know it's easy to repeat that. Yes, she got herself off. She
Well,
was
it's a
able to do
lot
that
easier when you keep volunteering too. So
Yes. And so now the worry is okay, so you have one player somebody can play some next to you. Now, if Amy survives this week, maybe then she becomes that same player. So you have Kelly, then Amy, and then you put a third person, and that person is basically the target. And I think
yeah,
that becomes at this stage of the game, you want a few more other targets around you when you go on that block because you want a chance to be able to argue they're a bigger threat or there's something else.
hmm
And that would be kind of the worry for Amy that she can become that.
right. Like I said, it's the upside down world. You're a threat because you're not a threat. so
Exactly.
so, all right. Well, the seventh rule says to trust almost nobody. How do you think this rule, or do you think this rule, came into play for Amy?
She trusted. Here's the thing: is yes and no. I think she trusted the girls' alliance too strongly because she trusted Rachel, and Rachel honestly did as much as she could. Rachel didn't fall on didn't undersell and tried hard to keep her
hmm
there. I I don't know if it's I don't know if this rule really hurt her too very much because there's a difference between trusting people and then executing on that trust level where she
Right.
didn't okay, all right, Dave, I never talked to you at all, if we didn't know each other. But then all right, I trust that you're gonna, remember to say my birthday, right? But if I never talked to you, wish me a happy birthday on my birthday. If I never talked to you at all, there's this little less chance that's gonna happen. So
Right.
she made these connections so and so with these girls in the house, but then she didn't follow up on it. She didn't. So is it because she trusted too strongly? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think that's the reason.
Yeah, I agree. I think there were some players in the house who she trusted and expected to vote for her. They got along with her. They may have liked her, may not have. But they realized that her staying was not good for their games for all the reasons that we discussed. Uh, the only two people I think Amy, truly trusted in that way were Rachel and Ashley, and those two were fine. They just couldn't rally the numbers, maybe in part because they don't even like each other. But um, Amy did trust Jimmy early, but it's not like trusting or distrusting him played a role in the nomination. He was doing what's better for him no matter what. I think he did trust her, and she trusted him, but it didn't matter. Whether she trusted him or not had no play in what ended up happening, I guess is what
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
trying to say.
No, I agree
Yeah.
completely. I don't
Yeah.
think that was the reason why she went home. That somebody
Right.
broke her trust and blindsided her. I think she knew exactly where she laid. And I mean, I think she said in her interviews she's laid out. These are all
hmm
the reasons that I went home. It's because A, B, and C, and now she blames it Rachel. But I mean, none of those are oh, I trusted the wrong person.
Right.
I guess maybe she will try to say she trusted Rachel or because she had Rachel in there, but we know that's not the
Right.
reason that she just went home.
Yeah. So speaking of the reason, it's time to wrap up. So, what are your final thoughts about Amy?
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of touched it throughout the whole time. I think so many qualities of Amy make for such a great mother, such a great friend, and great person you'd want to know outside the Big Brother house. We see this with a lot of players. But I think unfortunately, all those qualities can be taken and put in the Big Brother house. And if you're just stringent on it and you don't have a strategy to ever be flexible or change your ways, you're not going to do well in that game. And I think that when you literally tie yourself to any other player in the Big Brother house and then do nothing about it, you're going to be seen as a asset for somebody else versus an asset for yourself. So for all those reasons from there, we're going to see you not do well. And unfortunately, she was not able to take responsibility for all her actions post game yet. For the reasons that she went home, and she's blaming it on Rachel. Rachel is not the reason why she went home. She went home because she had an inability to change her strategy and actually execute on making allies in the game. So that's the reason why I think
Yeah.
Amy lost.
Yeah, in the later part of this week, when it became pretty clear Amy would be headed out the door unless she won the blockbuster, I mentioned this earlier. I thought this would be a pretty tame podcast. But the more she talked about her ideas and why she lost, and then continued that in her interviews, the more I realized she was putting thoughts out into the world that needed to be corrected. And here we are to do that. Amy blamed Rachel for pretty much everything that went wrong with her game. That simply was not the case. She was nominated the first time in large part because she foolishly defended Ashley's behavior to Vince and showed how tight the two of them were. That had nothing to do with Rachel. Indeed, she was saved that first week in large part because Rachel rallied the votes for her and against Zay. Then she was an easy nominee when Jimmy needed a fourth person because she'd already been a nominee, which is something we frequently see. Plus, she wasn't valuable to Jimmy's game. Again, nothing to do with Rachel. Amy has said the target on Rachel was so big that it put a target on her. But again, it wasn't Rachel who attracted the initial attention to her. Yes, people used her closeness to Rachel as an excuse/reason to vote her out. But as a player, you always have to think about who you're aligned with. Amy chose Rachel as a friend and close ally in the house. She apparently wanted all of the benefits and none of the drawbacks. But being in an obvious duo with anybody can get you booted, let alone with the sole returning player. Earlier in the week, it looked like it might be a close vote, but as the days passed, whatever support she might have had just fell apart. That wasn't Rachel's fault. That was her own for giving in to defeat and refusing to do what was necessary to convince people she was good for their game. More than anything, I don't think the other players were so much against Amy as they just didn't care about keeping her as much, compared to the others. If someone like Kelly or Keanu had stayed on the block, she probably would have been fine. But against Will and Adrian, those two hadn't done anything to upset people, especially Will, who is particularly well liked. Yes, there were reasons to go after Amy because of her being in a duo with Rachel. But more than that, she just didn't give people compelling reasons to keep her. And that is why Amy lost.
Well said. Well said. Maybe not as fiery, but well said.
Yeah. It got less fire as it went on, but
a good summation.
Yes. Thank you. All right. Well, we will have our spoiler-free predictions in a moment after a few other pieces of information. And of course, if you want our full spoilery thoughts, we are all over social media.
That is correct. Don't forget that both of us are active on a number of different social media platforms where we discuss Big Brother and other topics. On Twitter and Blue Sky and Instagram, I'm at Ovi Kabir. And on TikTok, I'm at Basmati Boy. David is truly all over the place, but there are a few ways you can track him down. You can find his various accounts through his Linktree at Linktree/David Bloomberg, or you can find him directly on Blue Sky as at David Bloomberg.
Yes. So we finally got it straightened out for Ovi. He is on Blue Sky at Ovi Kabir. So he already, he already has people following him. So that's, we've gotten him. We've gotten him just in time for him to be so busy for the next 2 weeks that he probably will barely be on any social media. But in any case, I still encourage anyone to come over there and have all your Big Brother discussions because that's where they're really happening. Also, ever since Big Brother began, I've been posting at least 3 or 4, or sometimes even more, videos per day on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram, where I'm at David Bloomberg TV. I passed 10,000 followers on TikTok, so thank you to those of you who contributed to that. And then it's been going up. So, the stuff that you get there is a combination of thoughts from the episodes, live feed clips, more of my thoughts, things like that. It's almost 100% Big Brother at this point in time. And as you had mentioned, of course, Ovi, you can find everything on my link tree there. So with that, we can move into our predictions. Um, I mention this every week just in case anyone's new and doesn't know. These are spoiler free. We write them up before we know the outcome of the HOH comp. So, overall, I think there are two possibilities for this week. Either Keanu wins a comp or Keanu goes home.
Mhm.
If he wins a comp, Kelly may well go unless she wins a different one. And that's the thing with so many of them. But with so many people wanting Keanu gone, and considering that he needed Casey to come in and win veto for him this past week, I'm just going to say he doesn't manage. It has to fall apart for him at some point. I don't think he'll do it. I will kind of replicate my prediction from last week in that he is indeed headed out the door.
Yeah, I wish this could be one of the ones where we disagree. I feel very strongly that Keanu is going to be in some hot trouble where we might disagree. I think the other person, and I could be wrong, I think there's a lot of drama around it. I think we could see somebody like Jimmy also get up. It could be the HOH-itis comes to bite him in the butt. I think he made a lot of people upset. Of course, there's allies there, but we have to see how long those hold. And with the Keanu slash Jimmy kind of feud, it becomes almost an easy thing. Of course, Kelly's thrown in there. Kelly will be on the block each week, I feel like. It might be something that's an easy sell. It's like, hey, you both are fighting, put you guys on the block. I do think, though, Keanu will find a way to get himself off the block probably because there's so many opportunities right now between Veto and then BBAI. We'll have to see. And my bold prediction, I'm saying Jimmy goes.
Ooh, okay. Wow. All right. Well,
Make it fun.
we will see what happens there.
We will. And as we wrap up, we want to encourage people to check out the RHAP patron program at robhasawebsite.com/patron. Rob has several patron-only podcasts for Big Brother, plus other perks like the Facebook group and Discord. You can help support shows like ours and everything on the network by becoming a patron at robhasawebsite.com/patron.
And make sure you're subscribed to all of the RHAP Big Brother podcasts by going to weknowbigbrother.com. It's right there at the bottom if you're on the video. Or you can go to weknowrealitytv.com to get all the Big Brother stuff, plus other stuff that is done by so many other people on the network. You go in, you select your podcast service of choice, you can subscribe, and you'll just get all the different shows that come through.
And finally, we want to thank Scott St. Pierre and Jessica Sterling and the whole RHAP and reality TV wrap ups behind the scenes for all the work they do from editing and posting and everything else. We really appreciate everything they do to get our voices from our microphones to your ears. And I got to thank all y'all for tuning in week and week out. We really appreciate it. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Let me know. Let David know if how you liked his fiery level and if you agree or disagree with what we thought. Tell us if there's any other reasons you think why Amy went home and lost, and then let us know your predictions for this coming week.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you once again, of course, Ovi, for another great episode. Now, normally at this point, I would say, well, see you next week. But someone had the nerve to schedule their wedding during Big Brother season. I can't believe it. I don't know what he was thinking.
It was a losing fight.
So I will be here with a special guest for the next 2 weeks while Ovi goes off and gets married and goes on his honeymoon and has a lot of fun. And, I am sure that, will be fun here. Not as much fun as being at the wedding. And so I'm sure I speak for all the listeners and viewers when I wish you and Hannah a great wedding. And, we will see you back here after your 2 weeks off.
Thank you, David. Can't wait to see y'all. I appreciate you guys so much. And yeah, I look forward to being back. I tried to fight if I could do the podcast on the honeymoon, but I lost that fight too. So she wasn't having it. She said, "You're gonna take a week off, or we're not getting married." So it was y'all or the marriage, and I debated it. But anyways, appreciate y'all. Thank you, David. Cannot wait to see all y'all soon.
Okay. Well, again, have fun, and we will see everybody else soon or on social media. Bye.
Bye.
This is RHAP. We know reality TV.